Okay, so trig notes day one. This is what we're going to start with today. So this first slide we're going to focus on is just kind of the idea of what trigonometry is in terms of our right triangles and identifying the different parts within a right triangle. So our trig ratios are sine, cosine, and tangent. And there's some terminology here that we want you to make sure you know. We already know the concept of the hypotenuse. Hopefully that's the longest side. But based on the angles they give us, we are going to want to also be able to identify the opposite side and the adjacent side. So in this particular one, we're focusing on angle A. In angle A, the side opposite of angle A is, we're going to call the opposite side, and then the side that makes up the angle that is next to the angle and not the hypotenuse, we're going to call the adjacent side. Now, we've got this little saying, Soh Cah Toa, that we're going to use. And here's what it means. So, so means the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So that's what this first one is here. The Cah, C-A-H, is cosine is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. That's this here. So you're going to want to write this down in your notes. And then the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. So take a few minutes right now and write that down. It'll mean a little more to you here as we look at an example on the next slide. Okay, so let's go to our first example here. So the first thing we're going to focus on is just naming the ratios. So we're going to give you a triangle that has all three of the sides already and just naming the ratios. So getting a little bit of practice with that. So the first one is the sine of A. Well, we say the sine of A, we know that it with our little saying, Soh Cah Toa, we know that the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Well, before we go about doing these ratios, with relation to angle A, let's identify our different parts. So in this picture, AB would be our hypotenuse. So I'm going to put a letter H right there above the 13 to indicate to me I know that that's my hypotenuse. With relation to angle A, BC, this side BC is the opposite side. So I'm going to put a little 0 or O for opposite. And that leaves me left with side CA being my adjacent side. So I'm going to put a letter A next to that side to indicate that that's my adjacent side. Now, once I've labeled my parts of my triangle, it should make it pretty easy for me to identify my ratios. If I'm going to do the sine of A, well, I find the opposite side is 5, and the hypotenuse would be then 13. So my ratio is just simply 5 over 13. Any questions with that? I'm now going to find my ratio for the cosine of A. So cosine, I go back to my saying, that's the Cah. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, I've already labeled my triangle, so my adjacent side is 12. And my hypotenuse is 13, so 12 over 13. Then my last ratio for the angle A would be my tangent. Tangent is TOA, so that means opposite over adjacent. Well, my opposite side is 5, and my adjacent side is 12, so that would be 5 over 12. Now, for angle B, I now have to realize now I'm focusing on a different angle. So now we're looking at angle B. So what that's going to do is that's going to change my opposite side and my adjacent side. Notice the hypotenuse will never change. It's always going to be the longest side. But with relation to angle B, now my opposite side is length CA. So I'm going to mark out this A. I'm going to put an O there now. And my adjacent side now is this side BC. So I'm going to mark the O out here and put a little A. So now when I find the sine of B, it's still opposite over hypotenuse, but now my opposite side is 12, and my hypotenuse is 13. So the sine of B would be 12 over 13. The cosine of B is now the adjacent over the hypotenuse, so that would now be 5 over 13. And my tangent, still opposite over adjacent. The opposite side now is 12, and the adjacent side is 5. So the tangent of B is going to be 12 over 5. So again, it is important for you to be able to identify the parts of the triangle with relation to the angle we're focusing on. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to go to the next slide, and I want you to do the same thing we just did on your own using this new triangle with the new side. So go ahead on your own and find the sine, cosine, and tangent of both A and B, given the new side lengths 3, 4, and 5. Okay, seems like most of you are ready to go through this, so let's go ahead and check them real quick so you can see how you did. So Soh Cah Toa, remember? First one, we're finding the sine of A. So if I mark in my picture for A, here's my hypotenuse, here's my opposite, here's my adjacent. So the sine of A opposite is going to be 3 over the hypotenuse, which is 5. So 3/5 would be your ratio for the first one. The cosine of A is going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So that's going to be 4 over 5. The tangent of A is opposite over adjacent. That's going to be 3 over 4. Okay, now if I focus on angle B, that's going to change my adjacent side and my opposite side. So the sine of B is going to be opposite is 4 over the hypotenuse, which is 5. The cosine of B is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's going to be 3 over 5. And then the tangent of B opposite over adjacent, that's going to be 4 over 3. So now we're going to focus on finding the missing side using our trigonometry. And also at this point, you're going to also want to make sure you've got your calculators out, because we're going to talk about how we utilize the calculator to find these missing sides. So if you don't have a calculator, you may want to come back and trade your phone in back here in the back and get you a calculator out of the drawer, because you're not going to be able to do these problems if you don't have a scientific calculator. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So in this picture, they're wanting us to find the missing side A, which is this little letter A over here to the left. When we're doing these problems, you want to focus on what the information is that they give us. So notice here they give us the 43-degree angle. They tell us that one of the sides is 11, and then they want us to find the A. So based on the 43-degree angle, we have the adjacent side, and we want to know the opposite side. So when you think about your little saying that we gave you, Soh Cah Toa, which of the three trig functions do we utilize the opposite and the adjacent side? The Soh, the Cah, or the Toa? The Toa. So what that tells us in this problem is we are going to use tangent. So we're going to say the tangent of 43 degrees is equal to the opposite side, which is A, over the adjacent side, which is 11. That's our ratio that we just practiced a second ago. Now, at this point, this is where it becomes a calculator problem. You're going to type into your calculator the tangent of 43 degrees. So everybody do that right now. Type into your calculator the tangent of 43 degrees. Now, when you type the tangent of 43, you should get a value that's something like 0.9325. Go ahead and finish the problem. To finish the problem, I'm going to take this 0.9325 and I'm going to multiply both sides by 11 to get A by itself. So if I take 0.9325 and I multiply it by 11, I end up getting 10.257. I'm going to round to the nearest tenth. So the length of A here is 10.3, approximately. That's rounded to the nearest tenth. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the last slide that we're going to do today. On this one, they're giving us the hypotenuse. They're giving us a 22-degree angle, and they want us to find the length of A or B. Now, for purposes of time today, we are just going to find the length of A. So A, we've got a 22-degree angle, and then we've got our 30. So in this problem, I have the hypotenuse. A is the adjacent side. I go to my saying, Soh Cah Toa. So if I have A and H, what am I going to use? Am I going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? On this one, I've got the A and the H, so I'm going to use cosine. So I'm going to say the cosine of 22 degrees is equal to A over 30 because it's the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. You're typing in the cosine of 22. So when you type in the cosine of 22, hopefully you got 0.9272 if you round it, equals A over 30. And if we multiply that by 30, hopefully you're getting a length here. A is going to be 27.8 for your side length.